They are the insiders, Pierre LeBrun and Darren Dreger. The day before the draft is always a busy one. General managers will have media availabilities today. We'll keep our ears on those fellas. But let's talk about Erik Karlsson, Pierre. Talk at the trade deadline about him potentially moving to a Canadian club in the Edmonton Oilers. Now word he could move this offseason is another Canadian team, perhaps looking into it.
Yeah, so we can confirm that the Toronto Maple Leafs are among several teams that have talked to the San Jose Sharks about Erik Karlsson. Now, you know, I don't want to overcook this. I mean, Brad Treliving is talking to a lot of teams about a lot of different things, but he has talked to San Jose about it just to see where that is at. And listen, you wouldn't think it'd be so hard to move a guy who just won his third Norris Trophy last night, but because Erik Karlsson has 4 more years on his deal at $11.5 million per year, it is very difficult, as we know, with this cap environment. So what's happening is this, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Carlson and his camp from Newport Sports and the Sharks are all working together to try and explore this market. Carolina Hurricanes are another team that have engaged with San Jose. We believe Seattle has talked about it as well. There are several teams. Carlson has not given a list of teams. It's an open canvas for Mike Greer, the GM of the Sharks, to try and explore this market and see what's out there. The bottom line with any team that's involved in this is that they want Erik Karlsson to be making a lot less than $11.5 million a year. So we'll see where it goes, but the Carolina angle is interesting. Of course, they traded for Brent Burns a year ago. Could they trade for Erik Karlsson? We'll keep an eye on it.
Dregs, you've been keeping close tabs on the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation. Talked about it being a 2-horse race yesterday between the Los Angeles Kings and the Montreal Canadiens. It's not necessarily just about who can get the contract in place or who can make the trade work. There are tricky mechanics to executing something like this.
It's very complicated, and shocking to no one is the fact that the salary cap is always in the heart of it, no different than Erik Karlsson. And the San Jose Sharks, you've got Pierre-Luc Dubois, who is going to require an extension, right? He's on an expiring contract as a restricted free agent, and the Los Angeles Kings aren't going to give up what they're going to have to give up to acquire Dubois unless they're getting that mega extension. So it's complex, to say the very least. So I believe that Pat Brisson, who represents Pierre-Luc Dubois, and the Winnipeg Jets are actively engaged in all of that. And then you look at the playing component that would come from the Los Angeles Kings. And we do have to qualify by saying it's never done until it's done. But there has been much speculation of a couple of young players that might come out of LA in Iafallo and Gabe Vilardi. I mean, those are 2 really nice pieces. And that was the tricky part, I think, for the Winnipeg Jets. This isn't a team that's embracing rebuild. They're trying to transition on the fly. So that's why Montreal all of a sudden became more of an outsider. And that's not just from Winnipeg's standpoint. That's from Pierre-Luc Dubois as well. It's believed Dubois actually prefers the Los Angeles Kings, but still a lot of work to get done.
If it does swing the way of the Los Angeles Kings, how does Montreal pivot? Because clearly they're looking to add and they want to get better. What's their fallback plan look like?
Well, it looks like targeting an age-sensitive player. They've got a real good young nucleus developing there. At the head, you've got Nick Suzuki, the captain, and they just recently extended Cole Caulfield. So they're looking for a forward that is going to be able to grow and develop within that group. And the currency that Ken Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens are playing with is futures in terms of young defensive prospects, because they have a glut of good young defense, and then draft picks. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what Ken Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens are able to do here.
Pierre Dorion held a Zoom media availability earlier today. Pierre talked about the fact that, yes, they're looking to move Alex DeBrincat. Wasn't optimistic about the idea that they could return a first-round pick in this year's draft. What do we read into him saying that?
Yeah, and so I think all along Pierre Dorion has told teams that he didn't see tomorrow night, the first round of the draft, being a deadline in Alex DeBrincat deal. Of course, he could be dealt in the next 24 hours, but the reality is Pierre Dorion views the 2024 first-round pick as just as valuable in his eyes, which gives him a little more runway here over the next few weeks to get a DeBrincat deal done. The other thing I should point out is that, you know, Detroit was seen as a front runner for Alex DeBrincat. We don't believe at this point they actually are. They're still in it, but not a front runner. There are a few other teams that have stepped up, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But Pierre Dorion needs a first-round pick as part of this deal. It's just that may not be tomorrow night.
Also confirmed in that Zoom call that DJ Smith and his coaching staff would be returned for next season.